All right, so hello everybody. We're back for our study of Genesis. We will be in chapter 31 tonight. We will start with a review of chapter 30. We were just talking about fellowship before we started coming online, and the idea of that we're strongly encouraged to be together as often as possible. There's a number of scriptures that are coming to mind. As iron sharpens iron, so does one person sharpen another. I already mentioned about the idea of being together as coals in a fire. But there's so many more opportunities for us to be together. And when you can't be with each other, obviously there are other ways to still strengthen your faith, one of which is prayer and, of course, Bible study. And just reading as much as you possibly can. For those of you with study Bibles, feel free. I mean, especially if you don't want to get too far ahead. Some of us are a little bit more senior in age, and we're concerned about our memory. Because so far ahead, we'll forget what we've already been reading. But also feel free, like I have a study Bible. The idea is just go a little deeper. And you can do this online as well. There's lots of things online to look at, so that you can read more about what theologians have said about certain passages or certain books, and you can gain a greater depth into it as well. Because frankly, that's all I'm doing. I'm just acting as a reference for everybody, trying to give you a context of what's going on and everything that's going on here. All righty? All right, so before we begin, let's go ahead and just talk a little bit about chapter 30. Let's talk about the main characters and what's going on. Now, we've come a long way in history. The book of Genesis obviously starts with the creation of the universe. And we learned about how animals were created, how man came to be. Obviously, the most significant thing happening in Adam and Eve's lives were original sin, the fall, where they began to believe that they could be like God, knowing all things. And that's caused trouble throughout all of history. But God was a God of promise. We've talked a lot about that. God is a God of promise. Even in the garden, he promised that one day he would redeem mankind back to himself. That he did through his Son, Jesus Christ. That if we trust Christ for our salvation, we believe in our heart that God raised him from the dead and confess with our mouth that he is Lord, and we will be saved from eternal separation from God. That's how important. So the beginning of Genesis is critical to understanding anything that you would study in the New Testament. You have to understand that man has fallen. Then we went through Adam's sons and the issues that went on there. Then we worked our way through a man named Noah. And we saw the flood and God trying to restart the world and what happened with Noah. And then the descendants of Noah. And we eventually became to what we now call the patriarchs, who make up the greatest portion of Genesis. It's really, if you want to try to remember it, it's the patriarchs plus one. The patriarchs plus one. The patriarchs are who?
Isaac, Jacob.
And
Abraham.
Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Very good. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob are the three patriarchs. Their wives play a very important role as well. We read quite extensively about Abraham's wife, whose name was Sarah. We don't see too much about Isaac. Isaac, really, there isn't a lot we talk about. But his wife's name was a little tougher to remember. Not Rachel. But R is there. Rebecca. Very good. For Rebecca. And but really, Isaac and Rebecca play a critical role primarily with their two twin sons, Jacob and Esau. All right. And we remember, Jacob and Esau were twins. Esau comes out first. Jacob is literally holding onto his heel as he's born. And Jacob, which means usurper or underminer, it's very important, that name, because of how things continue to roll out in the Bible. Jacob undermines Esau. What was it that Jacob did to Esau?
He took his blessing.
He took his blessing and his birthright. He takes them both. He cheats him out of his birthright and then usurps the blessing from their father Isaac. Reflections of mankind. We always going all the way back to the garden, to when Adam and Eve believed that they could be like God and take things that matters into their own hands. It's always the same problem. Anytime we don't trust God and don't just rely upon Him, and take matters in our own hands, we result in a fall. It just keeps happening all over and over again. We're seeing it through the patriarchs. Jacob and Esau split. Jacob takes off to the land of his father. He goes back to Canaan and to find a wife. And he's going to go work for his uncle, Laban. And as a result, he meets one of Laban's daughters, Rachel. Well. And Rachel is right?
Okay.
He likes Leah better.
He likes Rachel better. He's deeply in love with Rachel, but he winds up with Leah first.
Right, because he had to.
Because he had to.
The oldest one.
He was the older. She's the older one, right? And Laban, he usurps Jacob and tricks him into marrying the older sister first. So, by the way, in order to get Rachel, what did Jacob have to do?
Wait for 7
With
years.
him for 7 years.
And then on top of that, because he already worked 7 years, which turned out to be for Leah, worked 7 more years in order to get to Rachel. But he's still working for Laban. He is still working for Laban. And
Laban didn't want him to go.
yeah, so that's where we were in now 30. Chapter 30, we begin to realize Jacob is already ready to pull chocks and tie down chains, as we say in the Navy. He's ready to go. And but Laban says, I make way too much money with you around, and I kind of like to keep you here.
A lot of increase.
Yeah, a lot of increase, because God's got his hands on Jacob. Remember, Jacob had in his journey, where pretty much he almost died, going from his father's house back to Canaan. Remember, he slept one night, put a rock under his head, which was common, and had a dream. You remember the dream?
You have to say this with the angels going
Jacob's
up and down.
ladder. Jacob's ladder. And seeing the angels coming and going, and God looks down on him and said, I'm going to take care of you, and I will return. And of course, Jacob makes a deal with God. Yeah, you'll be my God, but I want to be returned back to my father, back to my own family. God is being the God of promise. Says yes. So now God is saying, it's time for you to go. You can head on back now. But Jacob has to work it out with Laban to be able to leave. And Laban isn't too crazy about this. So the key thing to remember for today's study is going back to, this is now Genesis chapter 30. And we can go to verse 31. So we're in chapter 30, and starting in 31. Jacob and Laban are having this deal-making thing. What will it take for Jacob to be able to leave? In 31, what shall I give you? Laban asked. Jacob responds, don't give me anything, Jacob replied, but if you will do this one thing for me, I will go on tending your flocks and watching over them. Let me go through all your flocks today and remove from them every speckled or spotted sheep, every dark-colored lamb, and every spotted or speckled goat. They will be my wages, and my honesty will testify for me in the future whenever you check on the wages you have paid me. Any goat in my possession that is not speckled or spotted, or any lamb that is not dark-colored, will be considered stolen. All right? Verse 34. Agreed, said Laban. Let it be as you have said. All right, so that ends it. Right? They stop talking, go their own ways. But a little later on, Laban comes back, probably with his sons. And in verse 35, that same day, he removed all the male goats that were streaked or spotted, and all the speckled or spotted female goats, all that had white on them, and all the dark-colored lambs. And Laban placed them in the care of his sons. Then he put a 3-day journey between himself and Jacob, while Jacob continued to tend the rest of Laban's flocks. What is Laban doing?
Robbing.
He's stealing from him. He's robbing him.
Taking the best.
He's just taking the ones that they've already agreed would go to Jacob.
Exactly.
All right?
He's just making
but he
his
knows.
deal work.
He knows what he's doing.
Yeah, he knows what he's doing. All right? And he's now usurping Jacob. Again, it's Jacob's bad behavior. God forgives sins, right? God does forgive sins, but there's a ramification for those sins. Just because God has forgiven our sins doesn't mean we don't still suffer as a result.
That's true.
All right? It still doesn't mean we don't suffer as a result. So Jacob is experiencing this. His uncle is stealing from him, thinking that now Jacob will have nothing and will probably have to stay and continue to work for Laban. This is the third, again, another attempt by Laban to undermine his nephew. All right. Verse 37. Yeah, remember, God has other plans. Verse 37. Jacob, however, took fresh cut branches from poplar, almond, and plane trees and made white stripes on them by peeling the bark and exposing the white inner wood of the branches. Then he placed the peeled branches in all the water troughs so that they would be directly in front of the flocks when they came to drink. When the flocks were in heat and came to drink, they mated in front of the branches. And they bore young that were streaked or speckled or spotted. Jacob set apart the young of the flock by themselves, but made the rest face the streaked and dark-colored animals that belonged to Laban. Thus he made separate flocks for himself and did not put them with Laban's animals. Whenever the stronger females were in heat, Jacob would place the branches in the troughs in front of the animals so they would mate near the branches. But if the animals were weak, he would not place them there. So the weak animals went to Laban, and the strong ones went to Jacob. In this way, the man grew exceedingly prosperous and came to own large flocks and maidservants and men servants and camels and donkeys. So this isn't happening in a week. These are years. And as a result, Jacob acted honestly. God blessed him. Again, by the way, we've already learned God will bless those he wishes to bless, whether they behave or not. Which again puts great peace in my heart. Because despite everything I try to do, I still sin. I still fall short of his glory. Yet he still loves me, and he still takes care of me. And that's, one again, being the God of promise. All right. So guess what's going to happen? Because we're getting ready to go into chapter 31. So it's beginning to look like Jacob has enough to leave. He's fulfilled his promises to Laban.
See ya.
Yeah, so let's see first of all, how does Jacob leave? I mean, does he just go to his uncle and say, that's it,
away.
I'm done? Or is he going to sneak away?
He snuck away at night.
Yeah. And the reason why is because Laban was not going to let him leave.
He knows how
He's already tricked him a couple of times.
He's getting out of the game.
So he's going to try
He
to...
had three things against him, and everything in the Bible, I noticed, I was telling Mike, is by threes.
It's Mike's favorite number.
Hey!
It's, every time I come up to it, I come up to it, I'll even do it tonight. All right? And I'll say, how many days? Mike will say, 3. Yeah, so again, if you want to have fun, I don't really believe in numerology, but if you want to have fun, there's a lot of fun with it. 3, 7, 10, 12. These are very common numbers in the Bible. Okay? Very, very common numbers in the Bible.
Should I play Megabucks with that?
You can. There's not going to be any correlation between the two. So if you win, don't think it's God. All right? All right? And if you lose, don't think it's the devil or anything like that too. It's just not how God does. God's plan for us is always very simple. All right? Love everybody. Just love everybody. That's one. Flee from sin.
I said that today.
Amen. Yeah, love them all, and let God sort them out.
That's the secret.
And again, what would the world be like if everybody just had that attitude? Just love everybody. And heaven is correct. Heaven would be heaven, which is what heaven will be. Everybody loving everybody.
Everybody.
And just trying our very best to care for each other.
This guy, I was online today, I was talking with him, and he said, we were talking about the Lord and stuff. And so he was trying to make a move, and I put him back scripturally in the Word. Then he said, so you just don't like me? I said, I kind of like everybody.
Yeah.
He says, well, let me ask you this. Since you're a Christian, he said, I'm a Christian. He said, do you like gays? And I wrote back and said, I like all people.
Yeah.
I just don't like their actions.
Yeah, right. Love the sinner, but you don't have to love the sin.
He's trying to find a way to
Yeah.
get me in an argument
Yeah.
with something, so I just...
He tried to trip you up. Yeah, just trying to trip you up. Yeah, well, good. You have something in common with Jesus.
Gotta be, yeah.
That's exactly what the Pharisees and the teachers of the law tried to do. Let's trip them up here. All right. See this coin? All right. All right. So what should we give to Caesar and what should we not? Jesus, takes the coin and says, all right. See, whose picture is this? It's Caesar's. Right, and he said, render unto Caesar the things that are Caesar's, but then he really trips them up. You know what he says next? And render unto God the things that are God's.
Yes.
And because they couldn't do that. They couldn't handle that part. So it's pretty cool. Yeah, it's funny how, again, 5,000, 2,000 years ago, this all applies in our life today. Again, that's one of the beautiful things about the Bible. All right, so our timing is perfect. We are ready to begin verse 1 in Genesis 31. Jacob heard that Laban's sons were saying, Jacob has taken everything our father owned and has gained all this wealth from what belonged to our father. Everybody can say, yeah, right. Okay. And Jacob noticed that Laban's attitude toward him was not what it had been. Then the Lord said to Jacob, go back to the land of your fathers and to your relatives, and I will be with you. Oh, I love that. Gosh, that's what I always hope to hear. Verse 4, so Jacob sent word to Rachel and Leah to come out to the fields where his flocks were. He said to them, I see that your father's attitude toward me is not what it was before, but the God of my father has been with me. You know that I've worked for your father with all my strength, yet your father has cheated me by changing my wages. Hey, there's one of the numbers. 10 times. However, God has not allowed him to harm me. If he said, the speckled ones will be your wages, then all the flocks gave birth to speckled young. And if he said, the streaked ones will be your wages, then all the flocks bore streaked young. So God has taken away from your father's livestock and has given them to me. Dun, 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 dun. In breeding season, I once had a dream in which I looked up and saw that the male goats mating with the flock were streaked, speckled, or spotted. The angel of God said to me in the dream, Jacob. I answered, here I am. That's a very common response when God calls people. Here I am. And he said, look up and see that all the male goats mating with the flock are streaked, speckled, or spotted. For I have seen all that Laban has been doing to you. I am the God of Bethel, where you anointed a pillar and where you made a vow to me. Now leave this land at once and go back to your native land. Then Rachel and Leah replied, do we still have any share in the inheritance of our father's estate? Does he not regard us as foreigners? Not only has he sold us, but he has used up what was paid for us. Surely all the wealth that God took away from our father belongs to us and our children. So, Jacob, do whatever God has told you. Then Jacob put his children and his wives on camels, and he drove all his livestock ahead of him, along with all the goods he had accumulated in Padan Aram, to go to his father Isaac in the land of Canaan. When Laban had gone to shear his sheep, Rachel stole her father's household gods. Moreover, Jacob deceived Laban, their Aramean, by not telling him he was running away. So he fled with all he had, and crossing the river, he headed for the hill country of Gilead. Verse 22. On the what day?
Third day.
On the third day, Laban was told that Jacob had fled. Taking his relatives with him, he pursued Jacob for how many days? 7. Gee, what's with these numbers, huh? All right. And caught up with him in the hill country of Gilead. Then God came to Laban and Arameam in a dream at night. Ooh, now Laban's going to have a dream. And said to him, be careful not to say anything to Jacob, either good or bad. Jacob had pitched his tent in the hill country of Gilead. When Laban overtook him, and Laban and his relatives camped there too. Then Laban said to Jacob, what have you done? You've deceived me, and you've carried off my daughters like captives in war. Why did you run off secretly and deceive me? Why didn't you tell me so I could send you away with joy and singing to the music of tambourines and harps? Oh, boy. You didn't even let me kiss my grandchildren and my daughters goodbye. You have done a foolish thing. I had the power to harm you, but last night the God of your father said to me, be careful not to say anything to Jacob, either good or bad. Now, you have gone off because you long to return to your father's house. But why did you steal my gods?
He didn't steal it, was Rachel.
It is. It's right. Now, let's watch to see how
Jacob
powerful.
didn't know.
Yeah, let's watch to see how powerful these gods are. You ready? Jacob answered Laban, I was afraid because I thought you would take your daughters away from me by force. Okay? But if you find anyone who has your gods, he shall not live. Oh my goodness, that's Rachel.
Yeah, his wife.
Did he just sentence Rachel to death?
Yeah.
Oh, you think? In the presence of our relatives, see for yourself whether there is anything of yours here with me, and if so, take it. Now Jacob did not know that Rachel had stolen the gods. So Laban went into Jacob's tent and into Leah's tent and into the tent of the two maidservants, but he found nothing. After he came out of Leah's tent, he entered Rachel's tent. Now Rachel had taken the household gods and put them inside her camel's saddle and was sitting on them. Laban searched through everything in the tent but found nothing. Rachel said to her father, "Don't be angry, my lord, that I cannot stand up in your presence. I'm having my period." So he searched but could not find the household gods. Jacob was angry and took Laban to task. "What is my crime?" he asked Laban. "What sin have I committed that you hunt me down? Now that you have searched through all my goods, what have you found that belongs to your household? Put in here in front of your relatives and mine, and let them judge between the two of us. I have been with you for 20 years now. Your sheep and goats have not miscarried, nor have I eaten rams from your flocks. I did not bring you animals torn by wild beasts. I bore the loss myself, and you demanded payment from me for whatever was stolen by day or night. This was my situation. The heat consumed me in the daytime, and the cold consumed at night, and sleep fled from my eyes. It was like this for 20 years I was in your household. I worked for you for 14 years for your 2 daughters, and 6 years for your flocks, and you changed my wages 10 times. If the God of my father, the God of Abraham, and the fear of Isaac had not been with me, you would surely have sent me away empty-handed. But God has seen my hardship and the toil of my hands, and last night he rebuked you." Laban answered Jacob, "The women are my daughters, the children are my children, the flocks are my flocks. All you see is mine. Yet what can I do today about these daughters of mine, or about the children that have been born? Come now, let's make a covenant, you and I, and let it serve as witnesses between us." So Jacob took a stone and set it up as a pillar. He said to his relatives, "Gather some stones." So they took stones and piled them in a heap, and they ate there by the heap. Laban called it Jagar Sahadutha, and Jacob called it Galid. Laban said, "This heap is a witness between you and me today." That is why it was called Galid. It was also called Mizpah, because he said, "May the Lord keep watch between you and me, where we are away from each other. If you mistreat my daughters, or if you take any wives besides my daughters, even though no one is with us, remember that God is a witness between you and me." Laban also said to Jacob, "Here is this heap, and here is this pillar I have set up between you and me. This heap is a witness, and this pillar is a witness, that I will not go past this heap to your side to harm you, and you will not go past this heap, the pillar, to my side to harm me. May the God of Abraham, and the God of Nahor, the God of their father, judge between us." So Jacob took an oath in the name of the fear of his father Isaac. He offered his sacrifice there in the hill country and invited his relatives to a meal. After they had eaten, they spent the night there. Early the next morning, Laban kissed his grandchildren and his daughters and blessed them. Then he left and returned home.
No matter how mean they were to each other, they still serve the same God.
Yeah, they do serve the same God. Jacob probably was walking a lot closer with God than Laban. But they're, again, especially on Laban's side, very deceitful. I mean, as soon as you're reading that part, okay, let's have a covenant between us. It's like, yeah, right, with you, right? You know, the great covenant keeper. And but needless to say, that this one holds. Yeah, this one holds.
That's why he served those for the false gods.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's again, and so and we have to have some questions about why Rachel took them. So yeah, but we'll get to that. So let's go back to verse 1 and work our way through the chapter.
I said she didn't want to give up their faith with those idols.
How about hedging your bets? Yeah, just keep them. Let's please all these gods. Maybe that god up there, but these gods here, and cover all my bases and be ready. Jacob heard.
Well, she wasn't sure.
In verse 1, Jacob heard that Laban's sons were saying, "Jacob has taken everything our father owned and has gained all this wealth from what belonged to our father." Well, there's your first lie. Right, there's your first lie. The sons are following the father, too. The acorn doesn't fall far from the tree. All right?
Yep.
Laban's sons are acting just like Laban. It's clearly not the case. But when they go back and they see Jacob's flocks, they're stunned by how large they are when they shouldn't have been in existence at all. Because their father had stolen they and their father, had stolen the wages, the sheep and goats that were supposed to be belonging to Jacob. They had already stolen. But yet God blessed Jacob. And this is verse 2, and Jacob noticed that Laban's attitude toward him was not what it had been.
He's not getting his way.
He's not getting his way. And no longer is Laban's flocks increasing.
Yeah, 'cause he's got all the weak
They're
ones.
decreasing. And Jacob's flocks are increasing.
Laban's are decreasing because they're all the weak ones. He ended
Yeah,
up with the
yeah.
weak
Also,
ones.
that's one of the
They
reasons.
may
for
have
reading.
been all like no spots or nothing on them, but they were mated with, they were like the weak ones.
And they're not producing the pure colors, which would have belonged to Laban. And instead of Laban saying, gee, maybe I did something wrong here,
Yeah, he should have.
he blames it on Jacob.
Yep.
Okay. And they're all turning against him now. Verse 3, then the Lord said to Jacob, now watch these words. Go back to the land of your fathers and to your relatives, and I will be with you. There's no time allotment there. If I hear God say go, I'm leaving. And so Jacob's fully in his right just to leave. He's got to answer to God. and frankly speaking, we're asking ourselves the question, why didn't Jacob say goodbye to Laban? So as we go through, verse 5. Verse 4. So Jacob sent word to Rachel and Leah to come out to the fields where his flocks were. Jacob said to his wives, I see that your father's attitude towards me is not what it was before, but the God of my father has been with me. You know that I've worked for your father with all my strength. Your father has cheated me by changing my wages 10 times. However, God has not allowed him to harm me. Jacob said this, explains it all over again. So God, in verse 9, so God has taken away your father's livestock and has given them to me. All right, so God be the glory. All right, in verse 10, in the breeding season, I once had a dream in which I looked up and saw that the male goat mating with the flock were straight and speckled or spotted. The angel of God said to me in the dream, Jacob, I answered, here I am. And he said, look up and see that all the male goats mating with the flock are streaked, speckled or spotted, for I have seen all that Laban has been doing to you. I am the God of Bethel. What's that mean? What is Bethel? You remember Jacob's pilgrimage is traveling from Canaan to Padan Haram. All right, he spent that night, those times in the desert. Remember, he had his dream. What happened? What did he do when he woke up? When he woke up, he built an altar and he called it what?
God.
Bethel, house of God. Say again?
You're right. I'm saying church, but you're right.
Right. It's a similar concept, all right? The idea this is where God resides. It could be called, you can call it Bethel, it can also be interpreted house of God. It also could be interpreted place of God. Remember, this is the ancient Hebrew. And so that's what he says. He's reminding him of the covenant that night or that morning after Jacob's dream where they made the covenant, the promise together. And he's saying, this is who I am. I am that same one. So I am the God of Bethel, where you anointed a pillar and where you made a vow to me. Now, watch these words. Now leave this land at once and go back to your native land. All right, so he's already told him, go. Now he's come back and said, at once. All right, how far away is Laban?
3 days.
3 days away. All right, 3 days away. So unless he's on the way to going back to Canaan, all right, there's no going back and stuff like that. He's just going to have to beat feet and hit it. Now, what is this conversation the wives have about their inheritance and everything? Does this make any sense to anybody? Let's read through it again.
Yeah, greedy.
Okay, greed is the first thing that does jump out at you. Then Rachel and Leah replied. Now they're asking rhetorical questions themselves. They're thinking out loud. Do we still have any share in the inheritance of our father's estate? Remember, they're being told they're leaving right now. Does he not regard us as foreigners? That in other words, Laban's attitude towards them has changed. They're being treated like they don't belong there. Not only has he sold us, but he has used up what was paid for us. That's their inheritance. Their dowries. surely all the wealth that God took away from our father belongs to us and our children. And then, so in this case, they turn to Jacob and they say, so do whatever God has told you.
That's true. He did sell them because in the other story, when he went to meet Rebecca, he just said, would you go with this woman? And she said, I will. And these, he had to buy them. You're right.
Yeah, he had to
That's why
earn
they're
them.
mad. He
Right.
sold
Right.
those women to them. Wow.
Right, exactly right, exactly right. So they have no love lost for their father. They have a right to an inheritance.
Yeah.
Okay, but by the way, remember, this is long before the days of Social Security. Okay, there are no laws in the land saying that pretty much it was a man's word was his bond, and they already know that their father is a deceiver.
And they were women, and back then women
Who even had
didn't have-
less
Yeah.
say in any of the matters. It's amazing how much the women get to say in these stories. It's absolutely amazing. All right? But God is blessing them and working through them as well. Remember, there are 2 other women involved here. There are really 4 mothers. All right? And we're up to, I think, 11 sons. All right? There's another son yet to come. And they're all the daughters. So these women have a lot of mouths to feed. So they're advocating not just for themselves, they're advocating for their children. All right? And the idea of an inheritance is critical to their existence. So they pretty much said, we have no allegiance to our father. All right? He has not only cheated you, all right? He's cheated us. And then they give glory to God. All right? So do whatever God has told you. I just think it's really neat that this conversation is going on. That Jacob listens to his wives, hear their side of the story. What is their perspective? He's gained their allegiance. Remember, they already love him, you know, but in many ways. All right. Again, remember too, we talked about this before. A man's identity is really in his children and in his goats and herds and stuff like that.
And he's prospered.
A woman's identity is in what?
How many kids she has.
How many kids she has.
And especially if she has boys.
Yes, especially if she has boys. Especially if
I got
sons. That's exactly right. Yeah. Well, you know, but in our age, right, we don't see that as your identity any longer.
No.
Really, actually, it's much better today. Your identity is really, well, from our perspective, is in your godliness. All right? In your godliness. That's what your identity is, as it is for men.
That's what people remember you by.
And we were talking about this again. You know, really, our responsibility to God is pretty simple. Just love everybody. All right? Just be as loving as we possibly can. Well, it's a struggle for all of us. Trust me, if we really want to get down to it, okay, we want to talk about what our problems are in our lives. It's either in our ability to love others, love God, or love ourselves. It always boils down to that.
It was a shame to get to the pearly gates, and because you didn't love everybody out of all the good you so-called thought you were doing,
Right.
he slammed that door in your face, or have
Right.
an angel slam it.
Right.
And the ones you hated or thought you hated so much, waking in and saying bye.
The old saying is that you'll be surprised by who you find in heaven
Exactly.
and who you don't see
Oh,
there.
isn't that the truth?
Yeah. I was online again. There was a great conversation going on about the struggles that Christians are having today with their businesses caring for homosexual couples. There's a lady who owned a cake shop. She didn't want to prepare a cake for a gay marriage. Another lady didn't want to be the photographer for a gay marriage and things like that. And the challenge was, well, wait a minute. What about other people who commit sin? You know, you got people living in fornication. That's the biblical term.
Yeah.
Do you serve them cakes and stuff like that? And that's a real struggle for Christians today, as to what they should and should not do. You know, and again, what will Christ have us to do?
But they put you in a spot in some positions, such as when I was in the after surgery, I was sent to a nursing home, and they had these guys that were gay working there, and
Right.
they were working as nurses and nurses' aides. And
Right.
you know, when you can't do for yourself at the beginning when you first get there,
Right.
then this guy came to my room and said, "Hi, I'm going to be your nurse today."
Right.
And so I went back and told the head nurse where I rang the bell, and I told her I didn't want a guy working over me. She said, "It's okay, he's gay," as if it doesn't make a difference. He's still a male, and I
Right,
didn't
right.
want him.
You didn't
in
want
my
him, or
room.
you didn't want a male?
Both, because I mean, I was.
She didn't want a man in her room.
Yeah, I wanted to.
Whether
have
he was gay or not. She
It's
didn't want
just
no
the
man.
way
Would
things
you-
are.
well, no,
Maybe
the-
he took it offensive, but I just.
The
not
question
used
is,
to-
if it was a heterosexual male, would you be okay with it?
No.
Okay,
either
great.
way.
Very good,
Even
very good.
worse,
So,
I
but
guess. I
but
don't
the
know.
question is that as Christians,
Yeah.
if we're truly to love everybody, all right?
It's not that just you don't hate anybody, just that you're used to having
It's
a woman.
uncomfortable, right?
Yeah.
It's uncomfortable.
Now,
because-
yeah, but
Especially
again,
washing your
yeah,
or
but
something.
Yeah.
no. Definitely a separate gender person, I understand.
Yeah.
All right? If it was a
There
gay
wasn't no
woman, if
hatred
it was a
there
gay
at all.
woman, would you have a problem with it?
I would feel awkward, but I would prefer her, you know.
Right. See, your issue is different than what we're talking about.
Yeah.
The argument is for Christians, do we by preparing a cake for a gay marriage,
Yeah.
are we then saying we're supporting the marriage? That's what this one woman out west was struggling with. All right.
I don't think so.
Well,
making
she's
money
made a
baking cake.
discernment that this is sin, and I don't want to be a part of it. All right. If you need to have a cake for a birthday party, I'm all there. If you want to have a cake for almost anything, but because this is something I know is violently against the will of God, I can't participate. That's the struggle they're dealing with.
Wow.
About, again, going back to this idea of how to love everybody.
She didn't say she don't love them. She just don't want to participate in their actions.
She does not want to be aligned with this, what she considered to
Yeah.
be an ungodly
yoked.
event. For example, if you were asking to cook a cake for a satanic ritual,
Yeah.
same issue,
Yeah.
same issue that she would have. She can still love them. Can I cook you a cake for your birthday party? Can I cook you a cake? But for your satanic ritual, all right. And of course, I'd get in a lot of trouble by saying, "Okay, you're relating a gay marriage to a satanic ritual." So no, I'm just trying to look at this thing as best I can, concerning what God has told me.
That's true. Even if it's your brother or your sister, you still have that same feeling. You're my sister. I love you, but I won't do it.
Right.
That's just the way I would look at it.
Right, and so that's one of the big struggles that Christians are having today about how do we love everybody.
Yeah.
Okay, Jesus did it too. No, see, this is the thing: Jesus absolutely loved everybody as best he could, but there were times he took a whip to them.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm not advocating violence, by the way. It's just that you really need to study. And like I said, I'm looking forward to the book of John. We'll get a lot deeper into how Jesus looks at things. By the way, when we're studying John, we'll be referring back to Genesis.
But they didn't but they didn't partake in the Sodomites in the Old Testaments in the Bible. They stayed their area and they stayed their own area.
In fact,
They didn't
that's the whole
partake
reason why
in it.
kosher came into existence. A lot of things came into existence to keep the Israelis away from all these other
That
pagan
type of
folks.
gay life,
But
yeah.
when the New Testament comes, it changes dramatically. Well, Jesus was a Samaritan woman.
He loved everybody. Yeah.
Right. Remember,
But they didn't deal with a lot of that stuff because the Lord had washed it all away, to my knowledge. I haven't read anything of that in the New Testament.
oh, yeah, well, we can study that a little bit more. But there were sorcerers that they dealt with, right?
Yeah.
Remember, in fact, Paul and Peter were undermining that because they were telling the truth. And that was a woman was a sorcerer.
They were very-
That other men were using her to be able to make money.
Yeah.
And then she comes to,
We got to get rid of Paul.
yeah, they got to get rid of Paul. But you see how we just jumped from this Old Testament story into our personal lives and the New Testament and what Jesus teaches are. So it's really important. It's really, really exciting. All right, so for Rachel and Leah, I really appreciate what they did. I appreciate what Jacob allowed them to do, but I agree with them. I really feel as though they need a bond to their husband. Right? And they need to go ahead, and God's given them plenty of reason to. All right, we're in verse 17. Then Jacob put his children and his wives on camels, and he drove all his livestock ahead of him, along with all the goods he had accumulated in Padan Aram, to go to his father Isaac in the land of Canaan. When Laban had gone to shear his sheep, Rachel stole her father's household goods. So that's before they left. When her father went out, she had made the trip over to her father's place, stole the gods, and took off.
Yeah, God's.
Excuse me.
Yes,
I'm
ma'am.
sorry. They said sheep there, but over there they call it goat. It's
I
Yeah,
think.
sheep
goats
and
and
goats.
Well,
donkeys.
we know them today as separate animals. I think they're using similar terminology for both of them.
So goats are males.
No, goats are a separate animal from a sheep.
I always
Yeah.
thought goats were males and sheep were females.
No, ewes and what's a female sheep is a ewe.
You. Yeah.
What's a male sheep?
I really didn't know that.
Yeah, there's a male sheep. I can't remember what it is.
Ram.
Yeah, that's right.
Ram.
Rams, right?
A ewe and a
A
ram.
ewe and a ram. And so goats would have the same thing too. They'll have male and female types.
What are household gods?
All right, very good. A household god.
The idols, probably.
Idols, almost anything you want to call a god, all right, are the little gods that you're going to leave in your household.
Something they worshipped.
And there was,
So Laban didn't worship the God.
well, he
No.
probably did have a relationship with the god, but treated him along, had other gods before him as well.
Oh, okay.
Okay?
Right.
Oh, that's that commandment.
Yeah, which hasn't been given yet, right?
Yeah,
That's
And that's
Moses.
why he's doing it, because they didn't know any better.
Right. Well, again, I think what happens here is
He's
God.
starting to realize he would.
Again, I think God's trying to, just like we know now, God is always trying to draw us to Him based on our hearts and our love. Versus putting down rules. But by the time Moses comes, there has to be rules. And so that's the study of Exodus.
He must have worshipped them a lot because he noticed they were missing
Yeah.
right away. Wow.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we're back in verse 17, working our way 18. Right, so now we're up to 20. Moreover, Jacob deceived Laban the Aramean by not telling him he was running away. Well, he deceived him by doing what God told him to do. So Jacob fled with all he had, and crossing the river, he headed for the hill country of Gilead. On the third day, Laban was told that Jacob had fled. In other words, enough time for somebody to come there and tell him.
Euphrates River, by the way.
Taking his relatives with him, he pursued Jacob for 7 days and caught up with him in the hill country of Gilead. Then God came to Laban the Aramean in a dream at night and said, "Be careful not to say anything to Jacob, either good or bad." Okay, well, we're going to find out what that really means here in a moment. Because Laban really said something really bad to Jacob. Verse 25, Jacob had pitched his tent in the hill country of Gilead when Laban overtook him, and Laban and his relatives camped there too. So they were at peace. This was not an attack. Then Laban said to Jacob, "What have you done? You deceived me, and you carried off my daughters like captives in war. Why did you run off secretly and deceive me?" Well, Laban, sit down and I'll explain it to you. You've cheated me out of so much. Why would I trust you with this? That's easily the answer to that question. Why didn't you tell me so I could send you away with joy and singing and the music of tambourines and harps?
Yeah. He couldn't trust them.
Yeah, there's no way he was going to let Jacob go. His sons weren't going to let him go.
I was going to send you away happy.
Yeah.
Why are you being so cruel?
I mean,
Just stay a little bit longer.
well, you're my money, you're my meal ticket.
That's it.
I can't
This is
afford to let
pocketbook.
you
Gus
go.
ain't going to tell him that.
No way. All right. So far these are all easy. We don't even really hear much from Jacob about this, but we can pretty much peck these down ourselves.
He's already going against God.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
You didn't even let me kiss my grandchildren and my daughters goodbye. Those are the daughters you sold into marriage. Yeah. You have done a foolish thing. Now this is true. Verse 29. I have the power to harm you. This is what God told Laban. Don't even be thinking about. All right? But last night, the God of your father said to me,
Your father.
be careful not to say, the relationship here. Be careful not to say anything to Jacob, either good or bad. Now you have gone off because you long to return to your father's house. But why did you steal my gods? One too many. Everything up to this point, Laban knew Jacob had done. Laban knew Jacob had taken off. Had taken all of his daughters, his grandchildren. He knew all that. That Jacob had to admit to. But that last one, Laban didn't know it was he. He went too far. All right, a bridge too far. But Jacob begins answering. Honestly, I was afraid because I thought you would take your daughters away from me by force. But if you find anyone who has your gods, he shall not live. In the presence of our relatives, see for yourself whether there is anything of yours here with me. And if so, take it. Now Jacob did not know that Rachel had stolen the gods. So Laban went into Jacob's tent and into Leah's tent, into the tent of the two maidservants, but he found nothing. After he came out of Leah's tent, he entered Rachel's tent. Now Rachel had taken the household gods and put them inside her camel's saddle, and was sitting on them. Laban searched through everything in the tent, but found nothing. Rachel said to her father, "Don't be angry, my lord, that I cannot stand up in your presence. I'm having my period." So Laban searched, but could not find the household gods. Well, wait a minute, why didn't he tell his daughter to get up anyways? Anybody know? Anybody know about a woman's menstruation and how it's treated in this culture?
That was bad. They had to
Yeah, it's bad.
get away from everybody else.
It was unclean. Very good. That's exactly right, Sharon. All right? They defiled the man. All right? Now, we don't know much about what's going on in this period, but in the time of Jesus, it's explained to us in detail. Like 7 days, you got to be, involved in a cleansing. I mean, they had these really wacko ideas about it. And so,
Allowed to
They still
pray,
have, I
not
worked for a
allowed to
guy
talk
in
about the
Exeter,
Lord, 'cause they would
owned
Be away
a
by yourself.
gas station there, and he was
It's like you had the plague or something.
But he was telling me about, he explained that to me.
right,
When his wife has that, she has to go to a separate place in the house. He has to take care of the whole house.
Right,
She
right.
does nothing.
yep,
It's
absolutely.
really.
Yeah,
I
and then,
was
and
like,
a
wow.
lot of Orthodox homes it's still the case.
Still today going on.
In many ways, also, it's also to protect the woman.
Yeah.
It's understanding the
Plus, they didn't
physical.
understand females that were there in the Dark Ages. They didn't know what took place.
Yeah, why
They didn't know
was
the
it
details
happening?
of exactly what. They just know this
Yeah.
is what happened, but they also know she was extremely uncomfortable for a week.
Yeah.
So they also wanted to do that and allow other women to treat her and take care of each other. So there's another reason why the men want nothing to do with this. Rachel, and I want you to know, I'm avoiding all of the silly comments about this as well. Rachel knew her father would not make her stand up. He would probably avoided her. All right? Probably avoided
It's
her.
shocking that he would go in his daughter's room to search it as if he didn't trust them to a point. It
Do you,
says
do you,
that he
do you have
went into
daughters?
their rooms.
Do you have daughters?
Yeah, but he's a man, and
I
he
got
went into
two.
his
Yeah.
daughter's rooms.
I searched my daughter's room plenty of time.
Yeah, but you weren't evil like this guy here.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm not that evil. All right? No, I had probable cause to search my daughter's room. But, and I notice my wife is not saying anything, although she's really the primary investigator.
We usually are.
Yeah, you usually are, is right. But, this Rachel deceived her father. Remember, it goes around, comes around? All right? Everybody's deceiving each other. The ongoing soap opera continues. So, Rachel said to her father, okay, so now we're in verse 36. Watch Jacob's response. Because he is very upset. All right? He's been trying to be an honest man. He's trying his best to follow God. He even said that during the covenant he made with Laban. You take all the non-spotted, non-streaked ones, I'll take the ones that spotted streaked. That way my integrity will be established. You'll see that I'm an honest man. And what does Laban do? Accuses him of stealing. Of what? These little idols. Not anything of any real value, all right? But something like this. Verse 36. Jacob was angry and took Laban to task. What is my crime? He asked Laban. What sin have I committed that you hunt me down? Now that you have searched through all my goods, what have you found that belongs to your household? Put it here in front of your relatives and mine, and let them judge between the two of us. Oh, Laban's not going to want to do that. He's already made himself out to be somewhat of an idiot. He's got his foot in his mouth, all those kind of things. Verse 38. I have been with you for 20 years now. Your sheep and goats have not miscarried, nor have I eaten rams from your flocks. I did not bring you animals torn by wild beasts. I bore the loss myself. In other words, when he was out there tending the flocks, if a wolf came along and killed one of the sheep, all right, then Jacob had to pay for him.
Wow.
That was the way it was, okay? And so that's all the more reason for them to keep the wild animals away. And you demanded payment from me for whatever was stolen by day or night. This was my situation. The heat consumed me in the daytime and the cold at night, and sleep fled from my eyes. It was like this for 20 years I was in your household. I worked for you for 14 years for your 2 daughters and 6 years for your flocks, and you changed my wages 10 times. The God of my father, the God of Abraham, and the fear of Isaac, that's pretty interesting, he uses that term, had not been with me, you would surely have sent me away empty-handed. But God has seen my hardship and the toil of my hands, and last night he rebuked you. A sermon, right? That's a sermon. Okay, there he is. He's bringing the knowledge of God right to him. Verse 43, Laban answered Jacob, the women are my daughters, the children are my children, the flocks are my flocks. All you see is mine. Yet what can I do today about these daughters of mine or about the children they have borne? Come now, let's make a covenant, you and I, and let it serve as a witness between us. And that's what they do. they make this promise right now, all right, that they're not going to cross that one spot there in Gilead. All right, wherever that pillar is, they would not cross that and harm each other. It was also their way of saying goodbye. Because I'm not coming back to see you, and I don't want you coming back to see me. Laban is unrepentant. He doesn't admit his fault. He continues his claim. Everything you have is mine. So Jacob took a stone and set it up as the pillar. He said to his relatives, gather some stones. So they took the stones. He had everybody do it. And they ate there by the heap. Laban called it Jegar Sahota, and Jacob called it Galid. They couldn't even agree on what the name was going to be. Mm-hmm. Laban said, this heap is a witness between you and me today. That is why it was called Galid. It was also called Mizpah, because he said, may the Lord keep watch between you and me when we are away from each other. If you mistreat my daughters, or if you take any wives besides my daughters, even though no one is with us, remember that God is a witness between you and me. So now Laban calls on his God. Laban also said to Jacob, here is this heap, and here is this pillar I have set up between you and me. This heap is a witness, and this pillar is a witness, that I will not go past this heap to your side to harm you, and you will not go past this heap and pillar to my side to harm me. Again, watch how this is described. May the God of Abraham and the God of Nahor, that's his father, and the God of their father judge between us. So Jacob took an oath in the name of the fear of his father Isaac. He keeps saying it that way. All right? He's giving great tribute to his father. He offered a sacrifice there in the hill country and invited his relatives to a meal. After they had eaten, they spent the night there. Early the next morning, Laban kissed his grandchildren and his daughters. Notice he doesn't kiss Jacob. And blessed them. Then he left and returned home. Do you remember how this began when Jacob first came into Padam Haram?
And Rachel at the well.
Yep. And what did he do with Rachel?
He kissed her.
All right. And when he saw Laban?
He told him he wanted to marry his daughter.
Yeah. He also kissed him.
Oh, he kissed Laban too?
Yep.
He kissed everybody, didn't he?
This is, you don't have to turn there. This is Genesis chapter 29. Yeah, he kisses everybody, right? This is in chapter 29, verse 11. Then Jacob kissed Rachel and began to weep aloud. How joyful he was. All right. He had told Rachel that he was a relative of her father and the son of Rebekah. So she ran and told her father. As soon as Laban heard the news about Jacob, his sister's son, he hurried to meet him. He embraced him and kissed him and brought him to his home, and there Jacob told him all these things. Then Laban said to him, you are my own flesh and blood. Okay, you see how the relationship is falling apart. All because of money. Right? By the way, money is not the root of all evil, right? We all know that. We misquote that all the time. All right? It's the love of money is the root of all evil. All right? You know, you can be a very, very wealthy person and still being solidly in God's will. Okay? And you can be an extremely poor person and be completely out of God's will. It's got nothing to do with it. The love of money is the root of all evil. And remember, for these folks here, they don't have cash, coins, and things like that. They have sheep and goats and other animals.
Greed.
Okay? Early the next morning, Laban kissed his grandchildren, his daughters, and blessed them. Then he left and returned home. He's saying goodbye. Absolutely terrible. Horrible ending. Something that could be beautiful.
Does that division still stand in today?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
On that, so that the generations
You'll
still
see.
say that marker still exists.
Well, yeah, I'm sure that's been leveled a number of times, concerning the number of tanks that have driven over that land. Okay, but it's. I bet you theologians can find the spots where these things were, but they go their separate ways. So we're going to do a pendulum sweep. We're going to go from this horrible separation. All right, again, where greed had taken over so much, self-interest, et cetera, et cetera. And we're going to do a complete pendulum swing, and we're going to see the power of humility and forgiveness. It's so funny, when we talk about God, we say, name some things that make God so powerful. We use terms like he is almighty, because he is. He's the great creator. He's the judge of all mankind. The most powerful words to describe God are forgiveness and humility.
Yes.
True.
And love, too.
Well, that's what drives it. That's what drives the forgiveness and the humility, his absolute love for us. But even then, we think of love, we think about caring for us and protecting us and using those powerful words. The powerful words are forgiveness and humility. We get to see that, and of all people, we're going to get to see that in Esau. Unbelievable.
That's Jacob's brother, right?
Yeah. The one that he deceived
Yeah.
multiple
Oh, yeah, that's right.
times. That Esau, when we last left Esau, Esau's promise was what? Okay? What's Esau's promise about Jacob?
Jacob.
Kill him.
He's going to kill Jacob.
No, when he saw
When we last left Esau, his promise was that I'm going to kill Jacob. That's the reason why Rebekah sends Jacob to Paddan Aram to escape Esau. All right? And then we're going to see,
Jacob welcomes him.
well, it's the other way around. Jacob definitely. Jacob's on his hands and knees. All right? But what Esau does is a testimony for all of us. All right, questions and comments about tonight's study?
There was just one bunch of people.
Meshuggahs. Well, again, the love of money. All right? And again, their money is different than our money. Their money, they definitely needed it for survival. All right? We live in a very fruitful country. There's lots of ways to be taken care of. All right? But these folks here, it's just that,
Kind of a lot of selfishness.
well, which is the original sin.
This and I want that. And I want
Selfishness
this,
is
and I want
always
that.
the original
Thinking about
sin.
yourself, your
That's what I was
family.
gonna say. Wasn't that Satan's original thing? Greed. From heaven, he was there, and greed had him booted out. It was,
He
'cause
wanted to
he
be
was
like
doing
God.
good.
He
Lucifer
wanted to be a
wanted to be
satisfied.
as
So he
God.
wanted to be greed and get more and everything.
Right.
So even to the day, part of his little spirit haunts us, I guess.
Yes. Well, it's the same sin. It's always the same sin. All right? It falls back to selfishness. Eve, listening to the serpent in the garden, all right, if you will eat of this fruit, your eyes will be open and you'll be as God. It's all about you, Eve. It's all about you. Burger King, a while ago now, a long, long time ago, came out with the phrase, "You deserve a break today." Was that McDonald's?
That's
You
McDonald's.
deserve, right. And then, but the key was you deserve.
Yeah. You
What?
deserve- oh.
I think the only thing I deserve is hell. If it wasn't for Jesus, I'd be there. All right? No, the only thing I deserve is hell. Burger King is have it your way.
Yeah.
Okay?
It's still
Burger King is
yours.
right.
It's
Yeah.
still yours.
It's all about you.
That's right.
I'm afraid to say it in our pulpits today, mostly because we require this of our priests and pastors. They got to get up there and tell us this is all about you. In order to be able to get us to pay attention. Versus, God doesn't promise us a rose garden. Actually, all He promises us is if we're really in His will, doing what He calls us to do, He says, nah, it's going to be pretty bad for you. You'll be mistreated. You'll be killed. He doesn't promise. He promises them heaven, but that on this earth it'll be hell.
Yes.
Our peace will be with God. That's it. And that doesn't bring you back next Monday, does it? I can't wait to go back and find out what God's got.
But you'll have peace during those times.
You'll be in peace because
in peace.
well, it's Stephen.
Because
It's
of
Stephen.
His mercy, though, we get a little slice of peace.
Right. Well, it's Stephen. Stephen was at great peace, looking into heaven, seeing Jesus standing at the right hand of God while he was being stoned to death. If you want to get into singing in the New Testament, because there's not a lot of singing, most often when they're singing is when they're in prison. Okay? Yeah, it's pretty interesting. Again, I don't want to say it's wrong to sing inside church on Sunday morning. It's not. It's perfectly fine. But that's not where you're going to get great glory. You want really great glory? Start singing when there's a circle of people all around you saying, "You're a Christian? What's wrong with you?" I'll finish with this. Our Christian friends down south, in Georgia and South Carolina, Alabama, Mississippi, all right? They really admire those of us up here in the north who are Christians, who are open about our faith. Because they know up here, All right, well, let me say, down there, if you're not a Christian, there's something wrong with you. Up here, you're a Christian?
Yeah.
What's wrong with you?
That's true.
You go to church?